people, what is up? Mr. Maureen here. A little late night screencast. I'm just going to tee up this week's work. It's a nice overview video of the Cold War and your choices for what work you turn in for Lee, Dowdy, and Maureen this week, May 5 through 5 and 7 is 12. Not a math teacher anymore. Yeah, May 12th, next Tuesday. We know that many of you are taking AP tests upcoming, so we wanted to give you some flexibility in choice and quantity of work that you can do across the next little bit as we explore the post-World War II era known as the Cold War. So here's a little background on the Cold War for those of you not familiar with the term. Between 1946 and 1991, until the fall of the Berlin Wall, the United States and the Soviet Union, as well as the allies for both sides, were locked into a tense conflict that became known as the Cold War. Though the parties were technically at peace, there was not hot war aggressively between the USSR and the United States. There was a lot of economic war and competition with one another, and the support of other countries that fought hot in-person wars with each other, which became known as proxy wars. And it became this important ideological and practical division that is the world that the three subsequent generations have been born into, of pitting American capitalism versus the USSR's attempt at full state Marxism, communism, and is a big part of the economic stage that was set for the world that we live in today. So it's really important to understand that basis. The term predated the Cold War as we know it. It was describing the tense and often economic tensions and instability that existed in the interwar period in Europe between World War I and II. And then in 1945, shortly after the US dropped the two atomic bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, the writer George Orwell, who famously wrote 1984, which you should all read, he used the term Cold War in an essay that explored what the atomic bomb meant for future international relations, and how that power and the threat of that kind of power would put neighboring countries into a state of tension and Cold War with such nuclear powers going forward. And he was prescient. That is what has come to pass in the 8 or so countries that are nuclear capable today. Ideology and this tension between what type of life it meant to pursue capitalism versus communism became a big part of the tension. And so when President Harry Truman offered economic aid to the failing economies of Greece and Turkey, it was not only the Americans looking out for smaller countries that had been war-torn, but also trying to say, hey, be on our team, like be team American capitalism, and try to support these countries that if they were not supported to become these, part of this new world order of capitalism, they could be swept into the control of the growing USSR. And so this policy would become known as containment, and it would absolutely go on to influence things like the Korean War and, of course, the Vietnam War. So as you explore the Cold War across this next week, you have two choices in how you go through that work and what you choose to explore. So option one is pretty straight ahead, pretty simple and predictable book work. These are 2 chapters with 2 sets of guided vocabulary and notes, and then a timeline of the most important events from the Cold War era. This is a little bit drier, obviously, of work, but again, this might be an attractive option for some of you who do have AP tests and would like to have a simple straight ahead, read, take notes, answer questions, create timeline, pretty straight ahead. For those of you who are interested in digging in and exploring this era a little bit more with some choice in terms of what you research, as well as what output you create, you have the option for this individual interest project, which is based off of something that might catch your eye in chapter 39, which you don't need to read in depth like the folks who will be choosing option 1. You'll pick one specific topic. You'll learn about that topic in a specific way of your choosing. That could be a podcast, a film, a book, article, websites, etc. And then you'll create a little mini project from it. So let's take a look at the hyperlink of that document that we've put together, explaining option 2, the mini project. I definitely don't need to be that big. Thank you very much, Screencastify. All right. So the U.S. Cold War, at home and abroad. So my overview of the Cold War and the overview of the Cold War typically focuses on the big picture or the macro scale of what the Cold War was about. You have that option in topics. Those are the first 2 columns here, zooming out and looking at the world. Mr. Lee did an example of the Cuban Missile Crisis. You can click on the hyperlink here and it will take you to his 6-minute YouTube video of that topic. On the other 2 columns, you have exploring what life was like for Americans at home during this era and how both our ideology and belief in American capitalism started to really shape our politics in both internally at home, domestically, as well as looking out, and how that shaped our relationships with the USSR and the policy of communism and containment therein. So we've listed some topics here that you can choose from. You'll sign up directly onto this Google Doc, just like I put my name and my hyperlink. Lee put his name and his hyperlink here. You'll sign up on this Google Doc with your topic. If you know of a topic from the Cold War, either macro era or domestic at-home era that we've not listed here and you would like to consider, just shoot your teacher an email and we'll gladly consider it and likely add it to the list. A quick note for any of you who take a look at my example. So I clearly am missing lecturing and talking to people and not just a computer. And this video, which I intended to be about 7 minutes, turned into about 15. And I don't want you to click open that link and go, oh crap, I need to make a 15-minute link. No, that is not a mini presentation. We're thinking somewhere in the ballpark of like 4 to 6 minutes. So what ended up happening is basically I just sort of went into the lecture that I would otherwise do and ended up folding in 2 topics here. So this is really kind of a twofer here. This is exploring suburbanization and through the American economy, and then went a little bit zoomed out into the American consumerism of the 1950s. So there's really kind of 2 topics in there. We would be looking at you really just picking one and doing that kind of a deep dive. So a little bit more of an overview here. You may work with a partner across any of our class periods. As I mentioned already, you will choose your topic and then sign up on that Google Doc above page 1. You'll just write you and your partner's names next to your topic. You can research the topic with the textbook and then a combination of web research, book, movies, podcast, film, etc. Remember that Wikipedia is a reference. It is not a source. It is an adequate starting point, but you'll want to scroll down to the bottom and find some of the sources that it refers you to. Wikipedia is a compendium of a lot of different, some experts and some people's opinions, ideas. It's a reference. It's not a source. So use it as such. You'll present your research creatively in a tight 3 to 6 minute window. So you'll be tighter than I was in my example. You can do the slideshow and Screencastify video audio presentation like I'm doing now, like Lee and I did for our examples. You could do audio only in like a podcast format. I'm going to link an example right here when I finish this Google Doc of one of my favorite favorite history podcasters who really does beautiful narrative storytelling and tight, like 3 to 5 minute stories. It's called The Memory Palace. I usually show it at this time of the year in class for people. So I'll link one of my favorite examples of his work here. He's much more succinct than I am being right now. You could make a video game. That sounds exciting. I have no idea how to do that. Comic book, graphic novel. I've had students do that with great success in the past. And then the old-fashioned written composition, 3 paragraphs-ish looking kind of thing, 750 word max there. And then you'll post it on the shareable link that your teacher decides. We're all going to do a little bit different submissions on school issues, so I'm not going to show you that this week. My class, we're going to be doing a discussion board. So that is the Cold War at home and abroad. This slideshow will house this explanation video. I will hyperlink it right here. But I guess if you're seeing that at the end of this video, you've already seen the video. Whoops. Time is an illusion. All right, cool. Peace out. Like and subscribe.